You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 30th of September 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Coming up on today's programme...
กฎหมายว่าด้วยธุรกรรมอิเล็กทรอนิกส์ให้สอดคล้องกับเทคโนโลยีดิจิทัลที่เปลี่ยนไป
We'll head to Bangkok, where our Asia editor will tell us how Thailand's new Prime Minister is planning to revive the country's flagging economy. Monocle's golf correspondent will be here to tell us what's making headlines in Dubai and across the wider region. Our friends from Bloomberg will bring us the latest business news, and...
having the river swim come back almost 100 years later was such a special moment.
We'll hear how the Windy City took the plunge and cleaned up its act. All that and more ahead here on The Briefing with me, Tom Edwards. A very warm welcome to Tuesday's edition of the programme. We start today's show in Bangkok. I'm joined, I'm delighted to say, by James Chambers, Monocle's Asia editor in Thailand. James, good evening to you. Now, tell me, the new Thai Prime Minister, we heard a little clip from him just a minute ago. Certainly got his work cut out. What is top of the in tray for the new broom?
So, with every incoming Thai government, the first thing they have to do is kind of set out their policy statement to Parliament. And that's what the new Prime Minister, Anutin Charnvirakul, did yesterday. And today he's been facing questions on that from the other parties in the Parliament. But, I mean, the important thing, or the most important thing to note about this Prime Minister is that his government only has 4 months in the job. As part of the deal they made with one of the largest opposition parties, they said they'd back Anutin's minority government and give them a chance to govern if they agreed to dissolve Parliament within 4 months and push ahead with redrafting the constitution that was put in place by the military after the coup. So Anutin took that deal, and so he has now 4 months, and so his priority is to prepare his party for an election that's going to become early next year. So, I mean, he said a lot of things about, a lot of projects reviving the economy, etc. But this can be very much seen as an initiative to try and win votes across Thailand. So the two big things he's doing is relaunching this COVID-era scheme called a co-payment scheme, where it kind of helps people to buy things by paying 50% of the cost, and also reducing people's debts and giving them a kind of moratorium on repayment. So those are the big policies from Bumjai Thai, from Anutin's side, and I guess we'll have to see what he can achieve in 4 months.
Well, yeah, I mean, James, there's the rub, right? I mean, we often talk about the limitations on progressive or ambitious policymaking, governed by any regular electoral cycle. Maybe it's 3, 4, 5 years, and how, that can encourage short-termism, and it's very difficult to get into certainly structural reforms or meaningful, enduring economic reforms. I mean, that's a complete impossibility, isn't it, when you're working on such a tight time horizon? Or is it the case that with those programs you mentioned, actually they can move the needle even just in a time frame that's measured more in weeks than in years? Well, I don't know. What do the newspapers say, and what do your instincts tell you about the ability that's going to have to reshape this at all?
Well, we all need deadlines, so maybe having a hard deadline for the end of January next year will perhaps spur things on. I think there are a load of people in Thailand who are very suspicious of the Prime Minister, and they don't think that his government will indeed dissolve Parliament on January the 31st. But, I mean, he has come out very clearly to say that is his intention. Tomorrow is day one, and he plans to dissolve Parliament on January 31st and have an election before the end of March. There are ways to wriggle out of these things, but he has kind of, come out and said that he wants to, set a good example. And he is, building towards an election where he stands to win a lot more seats. Right now, he has a minority government, and there's not much he can get done. But he is, his party is on the rise. It has the backing of the conservative factions here in Thailand. And if you look ahead at the next election, he would be one of the big winners. So I guess his focus now is to basically make people happy in the short term with a lot of kind of handouts and sweeteners. I mean, the big problem, though, for Thailand is that the economy needs a lot more than that. And I've been speaking to a lot of businesses here, and they need to see some, big ideas, some bold policies that are kind of get Thailand out of its current rut. And that's not going to happen with just basically letting people off their debts and trying to encourage them to buy more. If anything, it's just continuing this kind of vicious cycle in Thailand around kind of these household debts. So there's not much from Anutin on the future for Thailand, but I'd imagine him and his strategists and all his policy people are saving those big ideas for when the election campaign really gets underway.
And James, tell me, with the caveat that obviously, it looks like maybe we wait for 26, right, to see then meaningful policy moves and, as you said, significant boosts to the economy in the medium to longer term. But he did, I believe, he did mention this border dispute, and obviously, even if you're only in the job for kind of 4 months, there may be some matters of relative urgency, maybe that are more geopolitical in character. Just give us a quick update on what exactly PM Anutin is dealing with this one.
Yeah, I mean, this conflict that's been going on with Cambodia since the summer, since July, I mean, it's still rumbling on. There are still skirmishes and it's still, making headlines. But since Anutin has taken over, he's spoken a lot about, resolving this conflict and finding a peaceful resolution. And things have improved dramatically under the new government. So unless something really drastic happens on the Cambodian side, it would seem that the momentum is towards, kind of winding down this conflict. But, at the same time, as everyone else may have seen from the reporting on the UN General Assembly, there were meetings that were held between both parties, both sides, behind closed doors when all the talk was about, peace and progress. But when it was time for the Cambodian delegation to take to the stand, I mean, it was a completely different story. And it forced the new Thai foreign minister to completely rewrite his speech and kind of, basically, attack, but kind of deny all the allegations made by the Cambodian side and point out that what they're saying in public is not what's going on behind the closed doors. So there's still a lot of work to be done on that. But I guess if Anutin can keep the peace for the next 4 months, and then that will definitely be another feather in his bow come the election.
And James, just quickly, I want to talk, a slightly different ball game. Literally, why is pétanque making headlines where you are?
Well, it's one of the things that I've learned about Thailand, which I never knew before I moved here, but pétanque is a huge sport here, and not only that, but actually Thailand is the best in the world at it. So you obviously would guess that the French would dominate, but it turns out that Thailand is the pétanque powerhouse, and they're the number one in the world. So it came as a huge shock to all the pétanque fans in this part of the world and in Thailand when the sports governing body in France banned the sport from the upcoming Southeast Asian Games, which Thailand is hosting. The Southeast Asian Games is a bit like a kind of Commonwealth Games or a mini Olympics. It happens every 2 years. There are 50 sports, 11 countries taking part. Thailand's hosting, and it was expected to pick up a lot of golds in pétanque. It cleaned up when it was in Cambodia 2 years ago, winning 6. But it was suddenly going to be banned because the governing body didn't like some of the individuals involved in administrating the support in Thailand. So they sent a very strongly worded letter. They banned the support. They banned anyone who takes part in it for 2 years. And that really kind of got ruffled a few feathers here. And the Olympic Authority here in Thailand sent an emergency delegation to France over the weekend. And suddenly we got this good news today that pétanque is back. Pétanque is back in the Southeast Asian Games. They've managed to resolve it. And so Thailand has some good news to look forward to. come December. And if it does want to take top spot as the host country in terms of winning the most goals and kind of win win against its regional rival Vietnam, then it'll be good that its superstar petanque players are back in the competition.
Absolutely love that, James. Now I know you're a keen five-a-side player. I know you used to play a lot in Hong Kong. I don't know if you still do now, but petanque. Do you what is it called? What's the little gravel pit thing called? I don't know. Do you get involved with a bit of petanque yourself?
Well, I don't. I mean, I'd love to get involved in a bit of petanque, but funnily enough, I live next to a big government headquarters, and so next to the kind of the swimming pool in my complex, there's a petanque court, field, I don't know what you call it, and so every day I can kind of hear the civil servants coming out and playing petanque. So it's a bit like, maybe in a common room in the sixth form or whatever, you might have a pool table or a table football table. I think here in Thailand, a lot of people play petanque, and you see it in all of the big parks. And as I said, it was something I had no idea was huge here in Thailand, but it is, and it's something that kind of suits. I guess it suits Thai people. It suits the climate. You can play it outdoors throughout the year. You don't really need to move that much. It's very, communal, and I mean. Maybe towards my old age, when I finally hang up my six-a-side boots, I still play here. But when my knees finally cave in, then I wouldn't mind a bit of petanque.
Love it. I sense a photo essay coming along. We'll revisit that on another day. James, always good to check in with you. That was our Monocle's Asia editor, James Chambers, joining us on the line from Bangkok. Plenty happening around the world. Let's cross over and hear from Carlotta Rebello, who's got the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Tom. Palestine has welcomed US President Donald Trump's proposal to end the war in Gaza, affirming its confidence in his ability to chart a path towards peace. In a joint statement, the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar and Egypt also said they were ready to cooperate positively with the US and relevant parties to bring the agreement to completion. The Taliban have suspended all internet services across Afghanistan, cutting millions of people from the outside world. The ban has blocked mobile and broadband internet services, disrupted satellite television, and impacted flight operations. Flights scheduled to arrive at or depart from Kabul airport have been cancelled. And today marks the first day of South Korea's visa-free entry program for Chinese group tours. 3 or more Chinese nationals traveling with designated domestic or overseas agencies can stay in South Korea without a visa for up to 15 days. Jeju Island, which already allows Chinese visitors visa-free entry, will maintain its existing policy permitting both individual and group tourists to stay for up to 30 days. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed, Carlotta, and we will have more headlines for you at the top of the next hour and throughout the day here on Monocle Radio. But the veritable parade of the talents continues on the briefing as we welcome to the studio, I'm delighted to say, here at Midori House in London, Monocle's golf correspondent Inzi Rashid is here. Hi Inzi, welcome.
What a lovely introduction, and it's so nice to see your face, not just hear your voice.
Not everyone agrees with that.
No, what's the old saying? Face for radio
exactly.
Is no.
I wasn't going to actually say it, but you went there straight away. Fair enough. No, a warm welcome. Obviously, we've chatted before, and our listeners will be familiar with your dulcet tones. But great to have you with us here in London town. Treating you kindly. It's a bit cold, isn't it, for you? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit nippy, and my parents have lived out in the Gulf for quite some time, and whenever they came back to the UK, even during the summer, they'd be like, oh, it's freezing. It would be quite warm here for me. But I've turned into one of those people now whereby I come back to Europe and I'm like, oh, God, it is a bit cold, actually. But that's because, you are living in 40-degree heat out. Yeah.
It's brisk. It's sunny, though. And you have been to the north of England, I gather, as well.
I have. And it wasn't raining, which is just...
Stop the presses.
I know. Landed in Manchester and it wasn't raining. I was shocked.
Other cultural cliches are available. Anyway, this is not what we're talking about. We're going to do a quick rattle through one or two stories through which you're looking with this sort of monocle lens, quality of life, the city and placemaking in the frame in particular. Interesting story we're chatting about out of Abu Dhabi, of course, looking at investment to improve quality of life, a staple theme for us. But it's interesting, isn't it? Not just what the plan may be, but how this is even being reported and sort of welcomed locally. Tell us more, Enzi.
Yeah, so Abu Dhabi have today announced that basically it will pump around 12 billion US dollars into making the city more livable. The plan, they've said, covers kind of housing, communities, schools, hospitals, and also plenty of public spaces, which I think is hugely welcome for the residents of Abu Dhabi. Officials there are kind of talking about leafy neighborhoods, better mobility, and kind of an urban environment, I guess, which feels world class, which is what they want to introduce. It's a very kind of Gulf style approach, kind of throw serious money at infrastructure and services to kind of shape how people live. It's, we've seen it happen a lot in Dubai and in other parts of the Gulf as well. Now, Abu Dhabi does already have some advantages, particularly over Dubai, which is about an hour a bit down the road. For one thing, the traffic is less of a daily ordeal. It's still a car city, but the jams really don't kind of build up like we see in Dubai. And there's also a bit more of a culture in Abu Dhabi as well, particularly with Saadiyat Island. They're reinventing the whole culture scene there. They've already got the Louvre Museum there. They're bringing the Guggenheim Museum. They've got a natural history museum there as well. The Sheikh Zayed National Museum coming on board there as well. And I think life moves at a bit of a slower pace in Abu Dhabi, which is increasingly appealing to those kind of wanting to leave the buzzy city of Dubai and Dubai's kind of relentless churn that it puts out. So this is really interesting because Abu Dhabi really throwing a lot of money to basically just make it a more of an interesting city when it comes to, your quality of life and getting out, going for a walk and not being interrupted by Dubai's relentless building and construction work and the traffic and the pollution as well as a result of all of that. But you still have to take into account that during the summer it's pretty unbearable to go out, spend time in a park, even play paddle outdoors, which I've been doing this summer. It's pretty tedious and quite difficult. You have to have a lot of endurance to do that. I think the big question is whether this kind of huge injection of cash will make the city not only easier to live in as a resident, but also vibrant enough to kind of keep people there all year round, because that's the current big issue in the UAE. It's a kind of like a 6 to 8 month country, and then for the rest of the time people are coming back to the likes of Europe.
And always tricky, we often talk about livability in big urban centres sort of going hand in hand with walkability, and obviously we know they try to be strategic about the creation or introduction of additional shade, but if the mercury's hitting kind of 50, you can do shade, you can introduce like water misting, but you it's very difficult to get people moving, and that has other implications. Of course, there's a public health benefit for Emirati people. We know that they tend not to walk around very much, so keeping people active as well is important. I don't know do we get any sense of what that's going to look like in this particular initiative?
I mean, there's the humidity factor as well, right? Because I just comparing to when I stepped off the plane here, into Manchester, you can just properly breathe through your nose and not get absolutely destroyed by the humidity. And my glasses don't fog up here as well, which is one very frustrating thing coming from AC out.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. I just need like windscreen wipers or something. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I think they will want to create spaces which allow people to still be active, still be mobile. Out in Dubai just recently over the summer, they started maulathons, which were basically you could run a marathon inside a mall in the early hours before the mall actually opens. And so, look, they are being innovative in the way that they are, making opportunities for people to still kind of go around the kind of daily rituals of, running tracks and all that kind of stuff. And I think Abu Dhabi will be very innovative in the way that they operate and pumping a lot of money, always, sometimes isn't the worst thing in the world. So, yeah.
That's for sure. Well, it's interesting. Your sort of cultural contrast, we'll come back to in a minute. I just want a quick detour into Saudi, Jeddah specifically. Our listeners may have spotted this already. Trump Tower plans, there are a few. And the sort of footprint of the Trump dynasty kind of, across the region actually is quite interesting. What do you make of this, Enzi?
Yeah, just another Trump Tower coming to the Gulf. Trump has got a great hold in the Middle East, particularly over recent years. Eric Trump probably makes 2-3 visits to the Gulf a year now. He's been there a lot recently. So they've partnered up with a real estate developer, Dar Global, and they are now going to be building a Trump Tower in Jeddah. It struck a deal with that branded luxury developers. It's going to be part hotel, part residences. And on paper, it's meant to probably inject a bit of kind of Manhattan glamour that Trump likes to think he's associated with into the Red Sea port city. I think the reality is it says much about kind of Jeddah's ambitions as it does about the Trump brand itself. I think Jeddah has long tried to keep up with Riyadh's swagger, I guess, and Neom's futuristic sheen that we hear so much about. But its urban planning has kind of often lagged, and so I think this arrival of a Trump Tower will be welcomed. But flooding remains a huge problem there. The waterfront is patchy. The skyline has never really kind of found its icon either. And so I think they're thinking that this Trump Tower might kind of turn some heads and signalling kind of cutting edge design as well, which will really help boost the city and the people coming into it.
We'll see. Cutting edge design. Trump's initiatives don't always scream that value to me, but we'll keep a weather eye.
If he cuts the ribbon or not, that will be
exactly. Yeah, interesting. Just briefly, it's interesting. You're talking about heading back up to the northwest and being here and these cultural kind of contrasts, not just meteorological but culturally. What I don't know, on the day to day, as you're just sort of walking through the city, we said, or out and about. I know you're sort of musing about this, and people might be able to read a little more about this in the days ahead, but it's interesting, right? I guess you get into certain kind of habits even, and they can have very different sort of meaning or implications depending on where in the world you are. Just tell me about this, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think, look, living in Dubai kind of changes your instincts a bit. You get used to leaving your phone on a cafe table, walking home late at night without a second thought, as hot as it might be, or even wearing a flashy watch. Not that I own many, but you have zero concern kind of doing that. And I think the city is very ordered. The rules are enforced to some manner, and theft is rare in a city like Dubai. And you develop how to put it, kind of maybe like a certain kind of urban confidence of the city.
I was going to say complacency, but it's kind of the same. Right?
Yeah, maybe, perhaps that kind of works. But coming back to London, I don't want to kind of throw London under a big red bus, but those kind of behaviours feel a bit reckless almost, because it's not so much about the crime stats and how kind of London is when it comes to the number of thefts and things like that, but it's more maybe about how cities condition their residents. In Dubai, you stand tall and you have trust in the public realm. In London, you kind of often like ducking your head a little bit, popping your phone in your pocket when you're walking, just looking over your shoulder a little bit more. I felt that, and maybe I felt that because of the stories that I've heard and the videos that I've seen across social media, but there is still an element of that, and so I found it very interesting. But I've been very complacent. I left my phone on a coffee table and went to the toilet the other day, and my cousin kind of looked at me and said, "What on earth are you doing? Like, take it with you. You can't just leave things lying around."
Super interesting. The stats are sobering. I think somebody said to me, it might have been Sophie Grove said to me, I think 70,000 like phone snatchers in 12 months in London. A quick bit of approximate mental gymnastics, that's around 200 per day, which is, and again, not to scaremonger, because I don't think London feels like an unsafe city, but that's a pretty arresting detail, and it is unimaginably different from the vibes in
absolutely.
Dubai.
You just don't have that. You just don't have that concern whatsoever. I probably shouldn't say this on radio, but I've left my apartment there with my cleaner still coming 2 times a week, and my apartment is unlocked. And so my friend comes and he's feeding the cats, and the apartment stays unlocked. And that's because you literally leave without any concern. The neighbours aren't going to waltz in. The security guard isn't going to waltz in. There's no one who can come in from outside who can come and raid. I mean, I've got absolutely nothing in there that they can take. But it's just that
it's
kind
the principle. It's the principle of it.
And it's that confidence that you have in a place like that. There's often these quite silly, I think, social media videos that influencers put out of leaving a a Hermes Birkin on a car and returning to see if someone's stolen it. I'm sure many of those videos are staged. But actually, I think if you genuinely did that kind of a test, your Birkin would probably remain there.
Listen, and feeling safe in the city, or urban confidence, you said. Maybe it's another new metric for us to start introducing.
I do feel very safe and secure in Midori House here, though, with you guys, and the hospitality is great. So I have to admit
the warm bosom of radio welcomes you, Indy. Listen, great fun to have you with us. Lovely to see you in person. Yes. Thanks for joining us on the programme. That's Inzamam Rashid in London. Where are you headed next? Just quickly, heading back to the Gulf?
Back up north, and then flying back to Dubai.
There you go. Listen out, listeners, for more from Enzi. And keep an eye as well. He may be musing on his urban confidence theme in the days ahead. Enzi, great to see you. Thanks for being with us here on The Briefing. We continue the programme now by talking business next. Let's cross to Bloomberg's newsroom. Our good friend Ewan Potts is standing by. Good afternoon, Ewan. How the devil are you today?
Hello, Tom. I'm very well, thank you.
Now tell me, economic data out of China, is it good news? Is it bad news, Ewan? Is it somewhere in between?
Well, Tom, this year is really shaping up to be a game of two halves for the Chinese economy. The start of the year saw a massive boom in exports, ironically, as a result of President Trump's tariffs. US companies were filling up their warehouses with Chinese goodies to get ahead of those tariffs. Now, those humming factories helped China's GDP growth to hit 5.3%. That's the annual rate in the first half of the year. But the latest data suggests that is not going to be replicated in the second half. We've got the official Purchasing Managers Index numbers today, and they've improved slightly this month, but they've extended their decline into a sixth month, and that is the longest manufacturing slump in China since 2019. Now, some of this is undoubtedly a hangover from all those orders at the start of the year, US companies not buying as much stuff because they've already got it in the warehouses. But the other part of the story is really no different than if we'd been discussing this a year ago before Donald Trump even came on the scene. And that is a lack of confidence from the Chinese consumer. And a key part of that is the property market, which is still showing no signs of recovery after that enormous crash we saw, which started back in 2021. And that is leaving a lot of Chinese consumers unwilling to splash the cash.
Yeah, that's an interesting one to watch, Ewan, for sure. Let me ask you a question now, about this is sort of law of unintended consequences, isn't it? So much discussion about the data sort of revolution, AI. Of course, enormous amounts of processing power needed, huge data centres needed, and some of the stats around what goes into these is extraordinary. And it's not all a good news story, obviously. Tell us why.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, this investment boom. I know you follow the stock market closely, Tom, and you'll know that a good deal of the large gains we've seen in US stocks this year is being driven by this almighty boom in artificial intelligence investment. And the tech giants are committing just enormous sums of money to build the data centers to power all these AI bots, which are going to be running our lives soon. Last year, the three biggest US cloud providers alone, Amazon, Microsoft, and Alphabet's Google, spent more than $200 billion on capital expenditure. And most of that is to construct data centers. They haven't all been built yet. A lot of this is still to come. Today's Bloomberg Big Take is a deep dive into how all of these data centers are already affecting consumer electricity bills in many parts of America. Power prices are very localized in a lot of states, and that's allowed us to look at the correlation between data center density and consumers' electricity bills. And while wholesale power prices have more than doubled in the last 5 years in some US markets, many areas with the biggest jumps, for instance, in Baltimore, are near hotspots for data centers. And this story extends way beyond the US as well. Power auction prices in Japan recently hit all-time highs amid expectations of an AI boom there. And in Malaysia, they recently lifted their power rates for data centers as new facilities start to tighten supply in their economy. And given that we've only really just started this data center building boom, my guess is we're going to be hearing a lot more about this story in the coming years.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. The bots aren't coming for all our jobs, are they, Ewan? We want more pots, fewer bots. How about that for you? Happy with that?
I like that.
Jolly good. Ewan,
I'm not sure it's going to come true.
Well, let's see. That's our friend Ewan Potts from Bloomberg joining us here on The Briefing. To the Windy City next, where Chicago's hosted its first river swim for almost 100 years. Decades of work has gone into the cleaning of one of the most befouled waterways in the world, lest anyone forget the images of the Dave Matthews tour bus emptying its prodigious 800-pound septic tank onto people taking an innocent cruise. Below, it lingers in the memory. Monocle's Tom Webb caught up with Lisa Nucci, CMO for the City of Chicago's tourism office, Choose Chicago, to hear about why the time was now for this revolution.
You know, it's interesting because the river is such a central part of the city experience, not just for tourism, but also for those of us who live here. And it's gone through such a transformation over the past, I would say, 20 years. You know, there's a river walk now that was built by Carol Ross Barney. She's a gold winning architect from Chicago. There's restaurants and bars, there's water taxis and architecture tours. And so I don't think it's that much of a surprise to those of us who live in Chicago that it's like, why can't we use it more for recreation purposes? And, you know, there's such a strong group of organizations that have and are committed to making sure that the water is safe. And so having the river swim come back almost 100 years later was such a special moment. And I think a testament to the work that city services and, you know, community organizations have put in making sure that that river is clean and safe, supports wildlife, and is an awesome place to do a river swim.
Now, it must have been a surprise for at least some of the locals in Chicago to see such a huge amount of swimmers in the water. What was the event and how did it go down?
So it was about 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, bright and early in the morning. I was there, and it was about, I would say, north of 250 swimmers that were pre-qualified. So you couldn't just be, you know, a normal person wanting to participate. So a lot of the swimmers had, you know, placed in triathlons or were former Olympians or current Olympians, which was super special. And there was a men and women's division, and they took, I want to say took off, but pushed off, I guess, right from the middle of the city with a huge group of folks watching them from the bridges that go over the river. And they were able to, you know, compete in a short and long distance swim. And it was just super special to kind of see all these swimmers in white robes lining up at the starting line and then jumping in the river for the first time. And, you know, you had the mayor there, you had a lot of people from the city services, like I mentioned before, there to kind of celebrate that monumental experience for Chicago.
Now, did you look across the pond for inspiration or maybe a little help with similar movements happening in Paris, Munich, and Amsterdam at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we always are going to look to international cities to see what they're doing. And I think that there's a really great sister cities program. Obviously, the Paris Olympics in 24 demonstrated the symbolic power, I will say, of reactivating an iconic urban waterway. And so that just showed how that prolonged investment in environmental cleanup can pay off. And the river swim in Chicago did the exact same thing. And we're excited to see other cities in the US and across, the globe kind of follow in those footsteps.
Now, you mentioned how the river is being used for recreation. It's amazing to have such a space suddenly transform. What would you say to other cities around the world, how you managed to achieve this?
I think we have, and, from the founding days of Chicago, the river and the lake have been a source of economic opportunity. Obviously, it's been used for trade. People get to work through the river taxi, like I mentioned before. And so I would say being able to activate, your river or your lake or any sort of waterway, if you will, and see how it can help with economic advancement, but also be a place where leisure and, tourism want to thrive. And so I think in Chicago, you see a very nice balance between those two. And we continue to innovate to see how we can push the needle in both of those areas.
Now, I wanted to talk to you more about Choose Chicago and your role, because sitting over here in London, I have to say, it feels like Chicago's having a bit of a moment. Everyone's talking about Chicago. You're in the spotlight. Do you feel the same way?
Well, I'll take that. Thank you. That's a great compliment. I think we've won Best Big City in the US for the 8th year in a row, voted by Condé Nast readers. We're the most walkable city. We're super diverse. Like we're a foodie. We're luxury shopping. I mean, there's so many countless things that Chicago continues to win by putting the hard work in, right? Like we are all about the work. But I think what really sets the city apart and what is starting to maybe put us more in the spotlight, as you mentioned, is that the people of Chicago are truly the most welcoming, unmatched, diverse group of individuals in a city across the US. And I think that the character of our city is truly standing out and defining us. And, we have such pride in our architecture, our art, our outdoor activities, our sports, our food. And I really think anyone that comes to the city, regardless if it's the summer or the winter, is going to find that welcoming hospitality and something to do for people from all different walks of life here in our great city.
And I have to ask the question, and if this gets you in trouble, we are very sorry, but where are we getting our pizza from?
Ooh, you know what? It's so funny because, deep dish pizza, that like oozy, cheesy pull that you all see in commercials with the red sauce on top, that is obviously something that when you visit Chicago, you have to try. But locals don't eat that. We eat tavern style pizza. So it's like thin crust, cut in squares. So there's this place called Pat's in the South Loop that a lot of us like to go to. So thin crust, tavern style pizza is what locals eat. But a special occasion is definitely deep dish pizza.
It's definitely nearly lunchtime. That was Lisa Nucci, CMO for Choose Chicago, telling Monocle's Tom Webb more about the excellent city of Chicago. And that is all we have time for in today's edition of The Briefing, which was produced by Tom Webb, research by Daniela Braw-Smith, and our studio manager was Lily Austin. My thanks to them, one and all. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Do join Andrew Muller for the Daily a little later today. But from me, Tom Edwards, and the Tuesday crew, that is your briefing. Thanks for tuning in.